What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. As always, thank you for tuning in. I have been doing a lot. I've been posting a lot on my social media accounts from the Tucker Carlson and the Vladimir Putin interview that he just finished about an hour ago. It's 8 o'clock here, Eastern Time, and I think they finished up the interview at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And so there is going to be content all over the place. We talked about on the last segment how the leftist Pravda media is all upset that Tucker Carlson is even speaking with Putin. Me personally, it is an American's right to interview whoever the hell they want, and I just find it very odd how the United States and the Western countries as a whole, how the United States government and the military-industrial complex expect us to fund a conflict, to fund Ukraine, to fund all these global conflicts, and not ask or get a reason from the other side why we're going into these conflicts. So I think everybody is very skeptical right out the gate. It's like, hey, wait a minute. No, you're not going to hear from the other side why we're going to war. We just need your money so that we can send them weapons and just trust us, right? just trust us. He's a bad dude. He wants to take over the whole world. He wants to conquer NATO. And once he gets through with Ukraine, he's going to be marching right into NATO. Well, folks, I watched the entire 2.5-hour interview. It was like, well, it wasn't 2.5 hours. It was about 2 hours. I watched the whole interview. And honestly, there was a lot of shocking content in there from Vladimir Putin, especially about deals that were made, that were thrown in the trash. How we ended up in this position, a lot of it has to do with 2014. Listen, this guy, he's a pretty sincere dude. There was a couple times I thought Tucker Carlson was going to get locked up into the gulag because this guy's not messing around. Tucker Carlson will interrupt him trying to get to the answer, obviously, try and get to the answer of some of these vital questions, and Putin he spends a half hour of the interview in the very beginning going all through Russia's history and Ukraine's history, and then it evolves into it's a pretty constructive and engaging conversation with Vladimir Putin. Now listen, I'm not some type of Putin lover. I'm neither side. I just don't like war. I don't like our country. I don't like other countries. I don't like people dying in needless wars. And so I'm for whatever is going to stop this conflict. That's what I'm for. And there's a lot of revealing stuff in that interview that I'm sure you're going to be seeing in the next couple days. So anyways, the leftist Pravda media was calling Tucker Carlson a traitor for interviewing Vladimir Putin to find out why he invaded Ukraine and what the story was behind it and what his plans are for the future. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think it's pretty obvious why they don't want us hearing Vladimir Putin's side. It's because they just want to cut endless blank checks and have us not ask questions about it. That's what they want. So that's not happening because Tucker Carlson went over there and he interviewed the guy. And like I said, there was a couple times, Tucker interrupted him and he wasn't ready to move on to the next question yet, apparently. So very, very engaging interview with Putin. And I've been making video clippets for the last hour and posting them on my social media because I feel like it's just the highlights, but I feel like it's stuff that people need to see. Very, very revealing stuff as far as having U.S. mercenaries have been in Ukraine since the very beginning. Germany supplies the number one amount of mercenaries, and then the United States sends number two. And so essentially we're fighting a war. We have Americans over there fighting, but they're not troops. And so this is how they play these games. This is how the military-industrial complex fights wars now, is they use mercenary groups and contractors like Blackwater, even though Blackwater doesn't exist anymore, but you get the point. Very engaging, and I'm sure you're going to be hearing a lot about it in the next couple days. So I don't want to get too much into that. And I haven't researched a lot of what Vladimir Putin said. There's a couple dates I want to I want a reference to as far as back in 2008, there was supposedly this meeting where they created these peace plans about how Ukraine and the NATO was never supposed to expand, and then they threw those plans into the trash. So a lot of stuff that I want to look into before we talk about it. But we'll probably do that tomorrow on the first segment of the show. So I want to get into the big stuff, the big news. The courts, there were oral arguments in the Supreme Court today about the 14th Amendment, Clause 3, about the Clause 3 of the 14th Amendment that the states are using to try and remove Donald Trump from the ballot. The Supreme Court heard arguments today, and we'll just say it's not going very well for the fascists that want to remove Donald Trump off the ballot, and some people are saying that this whole thing is over, and it may just be an 8-1, maybe even a 9-0 decision. That is really what needs to be done. The 9-0, a unanimous decision across the board. There's no need for 8 justices to see through the sham and then have one leftist judge, most likely Sotomayor, say, oh yeah, he's guilty of insurrection and he should be removed. I think it should be a unanimous decision, and I think it is up to Judge Roberts, the chief judge, to get that unanimous decision. So we'll see, but as far as what I'm reading and what I've been gathering so far, it's over, folks. It's over. So I have a post from X Twitter. I'm calling it X Twitter now because I think Elon was trying to tell us something. I think I don't know, this is just the way I see it, but don't you think like maybe he put the X in front of Twitter? Like he replaced it with X because he knew people were going to say X Twitter, which, former Twitter, X Twitter, I don't know. It was just an idea I was thinking of a little bit ago. Anyways, so I have this tweet from Julie Kelly. And she says, here we go. Jonathan Mitchell, Trump's attorney, opens by stating Trump is not an officer of the U.S. Term applies to appointed, not elected officials. And so what she's doing is she's essentially almost as if she was in the courtroom. Maybe she was in the courtroom listening, and she just kind of is jotting down notes and tweeting out different portions of the arguments. And so that's what I want to go ahead and read through you now. Because very interesting dialogue here. All right, so it starts off with, here we go. Jonathan Mitchell, Trump's attorney, opens by stating Trump is not an officer of the U.S. Term applies to appointed, not elected officials. Quote, a state cannot exclude any candidate from the ballot under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. The debate between justices and Mitchell centers on whether states have a right to enforce Section 3, 14th Amendment. Trump's attorney seems to suggest enabling legislation is needed. So in other words, Trump's attorney is like, listen, this may be an issue, but it's not an issue for the Supreme Court, and it's certainly not an issue that a state can make, and that it requires legislation by Congress. That's essentially what he said. So Justice Alito says, quote, who can enforce Section 3 with respect to a presidential candidate? Consequences would be severe. Unquote. Also at issue is the implementation of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment by a state adds another qualification to run for president not currently in the Constitution. So essentially what Alito is saying, we have qualifications in the Constitution for someone to be a president, which is the age, the a citizen of this country, and so on and so forth. So essentially by Colorado doing this, and if the Supreme Court were to uphold the Colorado's ruling, then that means this would add a whole nother qualification to the Constitution. That is called amending a Constitution, which a state obviously cannot do, and it is something that has to be done by legislation. So these are the arguments that are being made by Trump's attorney, which it's obvious that they're not going to be able to do this because it's just ludicrous that they think one state can remove a president from the ballot because of emotions. That's what it is. That's what all this is about, folks. In a nutshell, they think Donald Trump shouldn't be president because A, he did not accept the 2020 election results and that he challenged the election. That's what they're saying, and that he is guilty of insurrection, even though he's never been charged with insurrection. And the court just, I guess, declared him guilty of insurrection. That is, so I guess if they say it enough, then I guess somebody's guilty of insurrection. I don't know. But clearly he hasn't been charged with insurrection. So if somebody's not charged with insurrection, how can you be an insurrectionist? All right? So Sotomayor and Mitchell going back and forth on this. For example, whether a candidate is 34 when running for president, but will be 35 when taking office. Quote, Section 3 bans him from holding office, Mitchell. Argument now moves on to whether a president is an officer, something Ketanji Brown Jackson tried to bring up earlier but was asked to delay her questioning. KBJ, Kagan, and Gorsuch parsing out the definition. So the definition of insurrection. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, passed in 1866 and ratified by the states in 1868, provides that no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or elector, or president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States, or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. So, in other words, in order for him to be removed, he would have to be convicted of insurrection. This is the biggest leap they're going to have. This is the biggest leap we're looking at. Donald Trump has not been charged. He's not been indicted. He's not been convicted of insurrection. So how can he be removed on grounds of insurrection if he hasn't been found guilty of insurrection? By this court in Colorado ruling that Donald Trump is unqualified to run as president because he incited an insurrection, or he's an insurrectionist. Like, that is essentially them declaring that he's guilty of insurrection without no trial, with no nothing. A court just comes out and says, yes, Donald Trump is guilty of insurrection, and therefore he's disqualified for running for president. Like, this is what we're dealing with. Obviously, these judges are emotionally broken. They're psychologically entangled with Donald Trump, and they cannot get a grip. And then you had two justices that essentially dissented and said essentially what I just said, and like, you're nuts. All right, so Alito asks if any state has ever disqualified a presidential candidate under Section 3. Answer is, of course, no. No discussion related to criminal prosecution under Insurrection Statute 2383, which Mitchell admits is a possibility, although he raised immunity question. From the brief, while Section 2383 might provide an enforcement mechanism for Section 3, it is not presently before U.S. That's because President Trump has never been charged with, let alone convicted of, violating it. The instant litigation feels to me like an end run around Section 2383. Right? It essentially does. It's almost like they declared Donald Trump guilty of insurrection without actually finding him guilty of insurrection. So, I mean, if you want somebody to be guilty of something, don't you have to go through a trial? Isn't there due process? Isn't there a procedure? That is essentially what he's saying. It's like, yo, look, you're essentially saying he's disqualified for insurrection even though he's never been convicted of insurrection. So don't you have to go through one process? And it says, to the extent there is interest in seeking to disqualify President Trump from holding public office, one of the mandatory punishments provided in Section 2383, based on the allegation that he engaged in insurrection, one of the acts prohibited by Section 2383. Why wasn't he charged under 2383? And relatedly, why isn't he entitled to more due process than that which he received in the constricted election code proceeding? To be sure, unlike Section 2383, Section 3 prescribes neither a fine nor a term of imprisonment as a consequence for engaging in an insurrection after taking the prerequisite oath. So I'm not suggesting that President Trump should have been afforded all the rights to which a defendant would be entitled in a criminal case, but here, the district court found that he engaged in insurrection after taking the prerequisite oath, despite affording him subpar due process, even under civil procedural standards. Ketanji Brown Jackson, back to asking about whether President Trump falls under the category of officer. She is also first one to raise issue of January 6 as an insurrection. Mitchell called it a riot, but not an insurrection. Colorado voters attorney Jason Murray, up next, says Trump incited an insurrection and is disqualified. That's their argument. That's what Colorado State Attorney is arguing. Trump incited an insurrection and is disqualified. Justice Thomas and Chief Roberts going hard on Murray right off the bat, disputes the states have power to enforce 14th Amendment and discusses historical context and execution of Section 3. Robert calls the matter ahistorical. Brett Kavanaugh, quote, who decides if someone engaged in an insurrection? He asks. Murray argues Section 3 is a prevailing as age, birthplace, residency of presidential candidate. Justice Kagan, which is a leftist judge, raises national consequences of a state, not Congress, imposing such a qualification, calls it extraordinary for a state to singularly execute a constitutional provision outside presidential qualifications. So when you lose Kagan, which is a leftist Democrat judge, you know you got an issue. Essentially, she's raising the question, like, how is it that a state can make a constitutional provision that would affect the entire country? See what I mean? So it's like they're wrapping themselves up in a constitution, but at the same time making it a state issue. This is why this is so madness, why they're doing this. No reasonable, sane, rational person would ever bring this case to any court. Furthermore, no reasonable or rational judge would ever uphold this case. But this is what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with sane, rational judges or attorney generals or prosecutors. This is what we're dealing with. This is the problem we have. Like I've been saying, Donald Trump is the exception to everything. So in normal cases, this would never happen. But because it's Donald Trump and these people are emotionally and psychologically broken, that's why it's happening right now. And when you lose Kagan, which is a leftist judge, you know you got problems. So Amy Coney Barrett comes in and says, quote, doesn't seem like a state call. Not going well for the Colorado side, Julie Kelly says. Amy Coney Barrett, again, raises due process rights under Trump. Limited evidence presented in Colorado trial. Judge Roberts essentially raises concerns over slippery slope effect. Quote, it will come down to a handful of states that will decide the election. I agree. Judge Roberts interrupts Murray, who responded with, frivolous attempts might happen, insurrection is a broad term. Murray, we haven't seen anything like January 6. Murray also notes that the section has been dormant for 155 years. Not sure that helps, Julie says. Pretty clear where Roberts stands. Gorsuch, scolding Murray a few times, quote, don't say it again, try to answer the question. So I can already see how this hearing's going. What this attorney is trying to do is get the judges emotionally involved by saying, look, we've never seen anything like this before. This president incited an insurrection. We've never seen anything like this. It was so dangerous. You see what I mean? Like they try, and this is how they get the emotions worked up on these judges, and the judges fall for it every time. They, instead of looking at the text of the Constitution, instead of doing their duty as a judge to be impartial, these attorneys are getting these judges to act emotional and to judge off of their biases. That's what they're doing, and this is what the leftists do all the time. They get so emotional when it comes to Donald Trump that all truth and rationale just goes right out the window. And this is what they're trying to do, and all these attorneys are doing when it comes to Donald Trump cases. Just get the judges emotional, get the jury emotional, so that they can get their desired outcome. Because why? Because Donald Trump is a very political, when you talk about Donald Trump, there's certain people in your family you talk about Trump with and you don't. You certainly, when there's family members that if you say the word Trump, they'll go into a spitting rage, and there's other ones you can talk about. This is what these attorneys are taking advantage of. They know how divisive Donald Trump is, and Donald Trump is only divisive because the media made it that way. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is all the media's fault for drumming up all this hatred of Donald Trump, for all the confirmation biases that they give people on MSNBC, CNN, calling Donald Trump Hitler. He's worse than Mussolini. He's a Pol Pot dictator. This is what the media has been doing. And so the attorneys, they fall into this emotional trap, and then they try and bring others with them by trying to get them emotional. And the judges are not having any of it. And it is certainly clear, that Neil Gorsuch did not like it. And he scolded this attorney many times and said, don't say it again. Try to answer the question. So essentially, Gorsuch was telling him, if you call this an insurrection, or if you say it like that again, then, you're going to have problems. Like, essentially, he's telling this attorney, you need to back off with the emotional usurpations of this. You need to stop. You need to back off with trying to evade answers by giving an emotional response. So Murray, the only way to remove a president from office is impeachment. Ketanji Brown Jackson also asks about individual states determining the eligibility of a presidential candidate outside qualifications clause. Generally, it appears the court recognizes the shoddy process that resulted in the Colorado decision. Murray basically says, go look at the record of January 6th. Justice Alito, quote, which record? Murray raises Trump's Twitter posts, keeps calling it indisputable. More debate on the impact of one state impacting the outcome of a national election. Justice Kagan, quote, what's a state doing deciding who other voters can elect as president? Damn. She's not happy. Listen, folks, when you lose Kagan, it's not looking very good. Gorsuch, back to officer debate. Murray, again, not helping himself. Quote, President Trump had a 5-day trial. So this guy, Murray, was essentially trying to convince the judges that, Trump had due process because there was a 5-day trial. For the most consequential case in probably U.S. history. Oh, but we gave him a 5-day trial. Okay, man. Yeah, she's right. Definitely not helping himself. So keep in mind who testifies at this trial. Eric Swalwell and D.C. Metro cop Daniel Hodges, caught misrepresenting his experiences on January 6 during at least one trial. Kavanaugh notes that Trump has not been charged with 2382, the insurrection statute. Quote, if the concern you have that insurrectionists should not hold office, there's a good tool to make sure that happens, which is criminal prosecution. Boom. Kavanaugh says Murray's position could disenfranchise voters to a great degree. Murray says Section 3 is intended to protect the constitutional democracy. This is what they say all the time. They say we're trying to protect democracy. We are the defenders of democracy. So they wrap themselves up in the same thing that they're actually destroying. This is the problem with Democrats. And the lack of self-awareness and the inability to see this is what's worrying to me. So Ketanji Brown, again, returns to definition of officer and pushes Murray to explain how Section 3 scoops in president. Quote, your point is there is no ambiguity. She also raises history of Section 3 that was to prevent the South from rising again. Now up, Shannon Stevenson, the Colorado Solicitor General. Stevenson represents Colorado Secretary of State. I love that Thomas is the first to ask questions of all participants. This is driving the left nuts. That's what Julie Kelly said during her little transcript here. So Thomas asks Stevenson, explain how Section 3 represents a qualification for president. And then this woman just says, she says it's disqualifying. Okay, whatever that means. She is pushed to defend a state removing a presidential candidate based on however state officials interpret sections of the Constitution. Stevenson insists Section 3 is as much of a qualification for president as age and birthplace. I've been hearing this talking point a lot. And, all right, the transcript goes on, almost done here. Most justices concerned that other states will follow suit, quote, have faith in our system. She says, institutions will make sure states don't overreach. Oh, yeah. Institutions will make sure states don't overreach. Yeah, like the institution in Colorado that brought that brought this case, or like that nonprofit organization that's funded by a bunch of billionaires that hate Donald Trump called CREW, CREEW, that brought this lawsuit against Donald Trump. You mean those types of institutions? Yeah, I'm not sure the people have a whole lot of faith in the institutions because the Democrat Party has been weaponizing them and politicizing them for the last 9 years. So those so-called institutions that you think are going to uphold normalcy and uphold the Constitution, yeah, a lot of people don't have faith in those now. Thanks. Way to go, Democrats. So Alito asks which institutions. Word salad response. So Justice Alito actually asks which institutions. Then the person gives a word salad response. So Mitchell, Trump's lawyer, back up for rebuttal. Colorado has changed the criteria in Section 3 before the candidate holds office. Yeah. So essentially, like, they do exactly what they've been doing for 8 years. They come up with a victim, which is Donald Trump, and then they find the crime. The leftist Democrats are trying to find any crime they can to convict Donald Trump with. This is the problem when you weaponize a justice system. The Democrat Party and these radical leftists, these judges, DAs, and prosecutors, they are dangerous to the justice system because they are on this bloodlust for Donald Trump. This purely election interference. It's so obvious now. With the primary results of Nikki Haley, with obviously this case going down the tubes, with the polls that we've been seeing coming out of CNN and MSNBC left-wing polls saying that Donald Trump is 5 points ahead of Joe Biden, it is clear and obvious that these people are relying 100% solely on a conviction of Donald Trump in order to sway the election. And so they are putting all their eggs into the lawfare against Donald Trump. This is so concerning on so many different levels. It is so bad for a country. It's so destructive to our justice system, to the trust and to the integrity of our justice system. And then these people are going to come out and say, oh, why don't you trust the institutions? It's like, well, because you weaponized them and turned them into a political tool so that you can get Joe Biden across the finish line. That's why people don't trust the institutions. And so the same people that sit there and wrap themselves up saying that they're the defenders of democracy, they're defenders of the Constitution, are the exact same people that are destroying the Constitution and destroying our democratic process, destroying our democracy. This is what these people have been doing for the last decade of my life that I can keep track of, and I'm sure even longer than that. But, you know, it is so relieving to see that these judges seem to be asking some legit questions, and the Colorado attorney and plaintiffs or the people that brought this lawsuit just have no rational response, man. I mean, everything that they try and throw out is just emotions. You know, we think Donald Trump incited an insurrection, so therefore he did. It's like, wait a minute, man. Everybody in this country, this country, the Constitution was founded on the basis that everybody would have due process. You cannot weaponize the justice system like this. This is what, I mean, it's not just, it's not just because of Donald Trump. Like, you shouldn't do it because it erodes the trust people have in the system, which therefore erodes our country and our democracy and our republic, period. It's like these people they cannot get out of this tunnel vision that they have, this jihad against Trump. They can't even get away from it long enough to see the damage that they're causing this country, all to stop the guy that gave this country the best years it's seen in decades. It doesn't make sense. These people are insane. They have lost their freaking minds. It is Trump derangement syndrome on steroids. These people are awful. And it's unfortunate that we all have to sit back and watch this sledgehammer be taken to our system. And I pray to God, and honestly, it looks as if this is going to be an open-shut situation. They're not going to get away with this. I think they know this. You know, when you lose Kagan, when you lose a leftist, and it even seems like Ketanji Brown Jackson was asking legitimate questions. So this may be an 8-1, maybe even a 9-0 decision, a unanimous decision that Colorado, no, Democrats, You cannot use Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to ban Joe Biden's political rival off the ballot, or any political rival. You cannot politicize Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to remove your political opponents, all right? Like, this is, and I think the court needs to come out, and I think the court will come out and say that. I mean, this is nonsense. And nobody finds it a little bit concerning that, you know, these people bringing these lawsuits in all these different states are all funded by anti-Trump institutions and Democrat nonprofit groups. Like, come on, man. It's so disgusting. It's so just typical. And honestly, it's quite terrifying to me. And when is it going to stop is what I want to know. It's like, I thought for sure it would stop after Donald Trump won in 2016, because this is the same stuff we seen in 2015, but not as bad, obviously. But then 2016 rolled around. I'm like, okay, now we can all get back to normal. No. Democrats just couldn't do it. These radical, insane people just could not accept that they lost the 2016 election. And, you know, it's like, and we've been dealing with it ever since. It's like these people have lost their freaking minds with Russia collusion hoaxes and congressional investigations and Mueller reports and impeachments for Ukraine, for, you know, for what we now know to be actually true. And Donald Trump had every right to be asking Zelensky about the corruption in the Bidens. Like, that's what I'm saying. That was one impeachment, and then another impeachment. And so this is the crazier thing to me, is like they impeached Donald Trump for insurrection, right? That's what the second one was about. They rushed this impeachment. It was like the fastest impeachment in U.S. history. It was like 2 weeks, and it was all put together by leftist Democrats. Like, no cross-examination, no bipartisanship. I mean, just the most egregious stuff we've ever seen. And then it's like it doesn't stop. Donald Trump goes away for a year, comes back at midterm, says he's running for president, and then the weaponization machine just kicks right back up into first gear, as if it never stopped. It's like as soon as Donald Trump announced he was running for president, here comes Jack Smith. Oh, you know, here comes the FBI SWAT raiding his house. It's like, my God, man, give it a break. I mean, what if the people did not want Donald Trump as president, then they wouldn't vote for him. It is clear and obvious that half of your fellow Americans want to vote for this guy. They look up to him. He inspires them. He gave them a good country, a good economy. He gave them a better quality of life. I wish these people would just accept it and move on. Like, my God, do you really have to destroy the entire country just so that you can what? Say that you stopped Donald Trump from giving people cheap gas so that they can keep more of their money? Like, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's like, my God, man. What, we're going to be like walking through the rubble of our country, looking around when the whole damn place is burnt down, and Democrats are like there with like they reach their arm up out of the rubble that's like all crusted and corroded and broken, saying, yes, but we stopped him. We stopped Donald Trump. And then the arm just collapses on the rubble. It's like, okay, but you destroyed our entire freaking country, man. Like, come on. Like, what is the matter with you people? These people have lost their freaking minds, dude. And I know these justices in the Supreme Court, they got to be asking themselves the question, the same stuff I'm asking. Like, at what point is, like, enough? Like, when are these people going to stop on this jihad against Donald Trump? Like, how much damage is too much damage for the Democrats? I mean, you already have the distrust in our intel agencies. You already have the distrust now in our justice system. You already have the distrust in our elections. You already have the distrust in our rule of law. Like, what else do you need to destroy? I mean, do you know how long it's going to take to repair some of this stuff? And a lot of this stuff is irreversible. Like the unprecedented impeachments, not once but twice. You can't change that. You can't take that back. Like the trying to strip a former president of his presidential immunity? Are these people nuts? Do they know what that's going to do to our country? So essentially what they're saying is that as soon as a president leaves office, the opposition can come up with some charge, some indictment, can come up with some wackadoodle plan, charge the president, indict him, and try and throw him in prison for stuff he did as president? You know what that means? I mean, my God, man. And so it is clear and obvious that this was a freaking disaster for the 14th Amendment ballot case. And I'm sure Democrats got to be asking, they say this all the time. God, why can't Donald Trump just go to prison? Why does he keep evading justice? Well, maybe because he's not doing anything wrong. Did you ever think of that? Maybe the guy's just innocent. And you keep trying to lock up an innocent man? You keep trying to make an innocent man be a guilty man? And the justice system, thank God, is working? Barely. It's like the justice system is hanging over the side of the cliff and Democrats are stepping on its fingers. It's like maybe he's not going to jail, maybe he's not being found guilty, maybe because he's not guilty of anything? Did that ever cross your minds? I mean, we got some weird ass people here, man. I mean, truly, truly broken people. Then they just won't stop. Unfortunately, it's causing so much damage to our country, man. So much. And they sit there and say Donald Trump was going to cause all this. Oh, Donald Trump is going to get us into war. Donald Trump's going to crash the economy. Donald Trump's going to he's going to destroy our rule of law and all of our institutions. It's like, wait a minute, though. You actually destroyed our institutions, trying to destroy Donald Trump. You destroyed our institutions in the name of trying to convince people that Donald Trump was going to destroy our institutions. I mean, this is wild. These people are actively destroying democracy in the name of democracy. And they cannot see it. That, to me, is the most concerning part, is that they cannot see it. And so, look, there's no video footage, I don't think, inside the Supreme Court while they're doing these hearings. And oral arguments are essentially you have both sides, the defense and the people bringing the lawsuit. They both go in there, and I think they had 30 minutes apiece, maybe. And essentially, the entire panel of judges, which is all 9 judges, have an allotted time to ask questions. I don't know the process as far as how much time they have to ask questions. Is there a certain amount of questions they can ask? But essentially, the judges ask questions, and the defense or the people bringing the lawsuit have to explain, then have to answer the questions. And based off what I'm seeing all over the internet, all over the news, is that the Colorado lawyers got absolutely trounced today because their arguments are bunk, man. They're trying to emotionalize something that shouldn't be emotionalized. They're trying to emotionalize and pull on the heartstrings of these judges, just like they do with everything else, just like they do on the media, just like they do with the judges in the appellate court, with the Trump immunity case. If they get a little inkling that a judge is somewhat biased against Trump, or a judge shows some type of, political weakness towards January 6th, these attorneys will spot that weakness and they will just drench that judge with nothing but emotional arguments. Like, Donald Trump committed insurrection, and so therefore he is guilty of insurrection and cannot run for president. It's like, wait a minute, though. But you're missing the fact that Donald Trump was never charged with insurrection. And so how is that possible? You can just declare somebody an insurrectionist? And not only that, you can declare him an insurrectionist and then remove him off a ballot so that hundreds of millions of other voters cannot vote for him? This is what I'm saying. Like, to me, this is the conspiracy to violate people's voting rights. And then in the D.C. case, they're accusing Donald Trump of conspiracy to violate rights, when it's actually these people violating people's voting rights right now with this cockamamie BS plan to prevent Donald Trump from being president by interfering in our elections with lawfare. That, to me, is violating people's rights. And like I said, maybe you haven't been able to get Donald Trump arrested with anything or convicted of anything, maybe because he's not guilty of anything. Do you ever think of that? Maybe he's just an innocent man. I'm just going to throw that out there. Maybe it's time to give it a rest with this whole jihad against Donald Trump. I mean, the bloodlust is off the charts for this guy, dude. And how much damage is too much to our country? I don't know. This is actually pretty shocking. On the same day we have these arguments about Donald Trump being removed from the ballot. Special Counsel Robert Hur released his report of Joe Biden's document case. Yes, Joe Biden was caught with classified documents as well. And it doesn't look good for Joe Biden, certainly politically it don't. I mean, it actually looks pretty bad. But again, the absolute two-tier justice system we now have in our country because of Democrats is off the charts. And this is just another example of that. So here is Technofog on Twitter 5 hours ago. Special Counsel Robert Hur's report has been released. Quote, Biden willfully retained marked and unmarked classified documents at his home. This, quote, risked serious damage to America's national security. Yet Biden will not be charged. I repeat, Biden will not be charged. And what are they charging Donald Trump with? Oh, that's right, mishandling classified documents. But wait a minute, wasn't he president? Doesn't he have declassification authority? Yes. Well, does the vice president have that authority? No, he doesn't. There's no reason why Joe Biden should have classified documents in his garage and all over the state of Delaware. But yet Donald Trump has them in his secured location at Mar-a-Lago that is protected by Secret Service, and he gets his home raided and is being charged and possibly convicted of 700 years in prison. All right, so here are the highlights from the report. Here is Chapter 11, the analysis of the evidence, classified Afghanistan documents, introduction. Bullet point 1. There, and this is directly from Robert Hur's report. It says, this is evidence that, after his vice presidency, Mr. Biden willfully retained marked classified documents about Afghanistan and unmarked classified handwritten notes in his notebooks, both of which he stored in unsecured places in his home. He had no legal authority to do so, and his retention of these materials and disclosure of classified information from his notebooks to his ghostwriter risked serious damage to America's national security. That is directly from the report. I'm reading it directly from the report from Robert Hur that he just released a few hours ago. I repeat, there is evidence that after his vice presidency, Mr. Biden willfully retained marked classified documents about Afghanistan and unmarked classified handwritten notes in his notebooks, both of which he stored in unsecured places in his home. Classified information from his notebooks to his ghostwriter risked serious damage to America's national security. So there you go. Two-tier justice system, anybody? Donald Trump is being charged for almost the exact same thing. Like, they are literally accusing Donald Trump of doing the exact same thing. And when I tell you why there's no charges being brought against Biden, it's going to blow your mind, and you may just punch your radio or throw your headset on the ground because it's going to piss you off, I promise. And I'll save that for the very end. So there are tapes. In 2017, Biden told a writer he, quote, found all the classified stuff downstairs at his Delaware home. These documents were later found by the FBI. Robert Hur, this evidence shows Biden willfully retained the marked classified documents about Afghanistan. In Section 2 of the evidence report, it says, Virginia, Mr. Biden told Mark Zwunsheiser that Mr. Biden had just found all of the classified stuff downstairs. So this is him. This is off the report. Photos of the Virginia home show that the lowest level downstairs where Mr. Biden told Zwunsheiser he had just found all the classified stuff, included rooms that Mr. Biden used as work and storage spaces. This evidence provides grounds to believe that Mr. Biden willfully retained the marked classified documents about Afghanistan. So essentially, Biden knew he had these classified documents. Not only did he know he had them, but he was sharing them with his ghostwriter? Like, really? Like, folks, I am shocked. I am shocked about this. This is insane. And there's not going to be any charges brought against Joe Biden? There is also evidence that Biden unlawfully retained classified notebooks post-vice presidency, disclosed classified info in his notebooks to his ghostwriter. And in Chapter 12 of the analysis of the evidence, it's highlighted there is evidence that when Mr. Biden left office in 2017, he willfully retained his classified notebooks. That is, he knew he kept classified information in his notebooks stored in his house, and he knew he was not allowed to do so. There is also evidence that Mr. Biden willfully disclosed classified information in his notebooks to his ghostwriter by reading it aloud to him. What? Biden's excuse, you ready for this? Biden's excuse to the special counsel amounts to a criminal false statement. Biden explained that when he described material in his notebooks as, quote, classified, he did not actually mean classified. Oh my God, man. This guy is such a fraud, folks. I have never seen anybody so corrupt and such a lying fraud like Joe Biden, man. I swear. And I've seen a lot about politicians. Joe Biden is bad. Bad. He is worse than Obama. He's like the biggest corrupt politician you could possibly think of. And I am dead serious about this. I haven't seen one yet. And that's saying a lot, folks. I mean, I'm talking ever. The most corrupt politician ever in our country. That's saying a lot. So the special counsel didn't buy it, of course. And in the evidence analysis, Robert Hur says Mr. Biden explained that when he described material in his notebooks to his Wanzeitzer as, quote, classified, he did not actually mean classified. This explanation that classified does not mean classified is not credible, Robert Hur said in his report. Recordings from 2017 captured Biden giving his ghostwriter classified info multiple times. Biden was on record admitting the info was, quote, unquote, probably classified. What? So Biden knew this information was classified that he was giving his ghostwriter? Oh my God. This is bad, man. This is so bad. So bad. So bad. And they want you to believe that Donald Trump stuff is bad. This stuff is awful. Oh my God. So here's the report highlighted. Mr. Biden appeared to explain to his Wanzeitzer that a notebook entry related to a long meeting on the Security Council it probably was classified. During the February 16, 2017 recorded conversation, Mr. Biden read aloud to his Wanzeitzer portions of the notebook entry that contained classified information. Folks, didn't CNN and MSNBC play that audio piece from that reporter where Donald Trump said, yeah, it's probably classified? Like, weren't they making a big deal about that? But here it is, we have documented proof from a special prosecutor that Joe Biden was reading aloud to his ghostwriter portions of a notebook that he himself said was classified information? Where are those tapes? I want to know where those tapes are. I want those recordings. You put those audio recordings right up next to the audio recordings that the mainstream leftist Pravda media was playing of Donald Trump talking to that reporter. Put those audio pieces up against one another and have the people decide which one is probably worse. This is freaking awful, man. This evidence shows that Mr. Biden disclosed classified information to his Wanzeitzer, who was not authorized to receive it. And then, here's another one, obstruction of justice. Biden's ghostwriter, quote, deleted digital audio recordings of his conversation with Mr. Biden after he learned of Hur's appointment as special counsel. What? This is insane. And then here you go. You ready for this? This is going to drive you nuts. And I have to do it because either way, you're going to learn it. So you might as well just learn it. You might as well just learn it from me. Robert Hur declined to press charges on Joe Biden or this ghostwriter. Yeah. So here in Chapter 17, the deletion of audio recording by Mark Wanzeitzer, Mr. Biden's ghostwriter. And he has highlighted in the report, At some point after learning of special counsel Hur's appointment, Mr. Biden's ghostwriter, Mark Zwanzheitzer, deleted digital audio recordings of his conversations with Mr. Biden during the writing of the book, Promise Mr. Dad. The recordings had significant evidentiary value. I guess we're never going to know what was in those audio recordings because this guy deleted them and he's not being charged. Two-tier justice system, anybody? Are we freaking for real here? You're going to charge Donald Trump and you're not going to charge Joe Biden for this? I mean, this is shocking. I am really going to love to hear the leftist media try and spin this one away. I don't know how they're going to do it. They probably won't even report on it. So here is photographs of documents, many containing classified info, found in Biden's home. You guys remember those photos that are being spread around, that were being spread around for months of the boxes of papers in Donald Trump's supposed basement or bathroom or whatever? And, you know, they didn't even say that they were classified documents. They just assumed there was a picture, so we'll just say they're classified documents. And so they did that to manipulate the public about Donald Trump. So this is how they drum up hatred for Donald Trump. This is all done by the media. It's propaganda, folks, literally. It's propaganda. They release these pictures and tell the public, oh, these are boxes of classified documents Donald Trump had in the basement. But there is no evidence that those boxes of papers were classified. And so what happened? The public believed it. Everybody bought it. Certainly the leftists bought it because that's their confirmation bias. They're stuck in that echo chamber. But here are multiple pictures I'm looking at right now from the report of Robert Hur of classified documents in boxes in Joe Biden's home. One looks like they're in his garage. My God. Oh, here's some documents. It says, in addition to the Manila, Afghanistan file folder, the box also contained a blue hanging folder bearing the same misspelling on the handwriting label. The blue hanging Afghanistan folder contained only a red file folder holding a one-page memo from 2012 unrelated to Afghanistan. Whatever that means. Oh my God. Biden's serious cognitive issues are exposed. Quote, he did not remember when he was vice president. What? He forgot when his term began. Quote, he did not remember even within several years when his son Beau died. And here are the highlighted portions of that report. So Mr. Robert Hur says he did not remember when he was vice president and forgetting on the second day of the interview when his term began. He did not remember even within several years when his son Beau died. My God. So Robert Hur would decline to press charges against Biden for a number of reasons. You ready for this? Here are the reasons why Robert Hur is not pressing charges against Joe Biden. He says, quote, a jury would not likely convict. Reason 2, Biden is too old to prosecute. Number 3, a jury could believe he did not willfully retain the documents. And number 4, a jury would see Biden as an elderly man with a poor memory. And here is the highlighted portions of the report that explain those reasons. It says, quote, at the time of any trial or sentencing, Mr. Biden would be well into his 80s, an age when relatively few people are prosecuted. First, Mr. Biden could have found the classified Afghanistan documents at the Virginia home in 2017 and forgotten about them soon after. This could convince some reasonable jurors that he did not willfully retain them. Third, as discussed to some extent above, Mr. Biden will likely present himself to the jury, as he did during his interview with our office, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. So as Robert Hur was conducting this interview of Joe Biden, which was weeks and weeks ago, Joe Biden was coming off as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory, and somehow he gets no charges against him. Not because he didn't do anything illegal, not because he didn't willfully retain documents, but because he's too old and a jury would see him as an elderly man with a poor memory. We got some issues with our justice system, people. I don't know what we're going to do. But I mean, don't they have to immediately dismiss the entire documents case against Donald Trump? I mean, this to me is shocking. It is freaking mind-blowing how they have this level of evidence, this big of a case against Joe Biden that willfully retained. In the report, it says, quote, willfully retained classified documents he was not supposed to have. And yet they're not going to charge him because he's too old and suffers from memory loss. I can't do this, man. We cannot continue on as a country when you have a two-tier justice system like this. This is just freaking mind-blowing to me. And I'm going to read more into this report. It is a big report. I'm going to read a little bit more into it. I just wanted to get into it from Technofog off of Twitter. Apparently, he already read it. This report came out today, the same day that they're arguing the case of Donald Trump being removed off a presidential ballot, okay, because of an insurrection that he's never been charged with. Joe Biden, not only that, and that's just one case. Donald Trump is facing 700 years in prison. And yet Joe Biden doesn't get charged with retaining classified documents, willfully retaining classified documents because he's too old. I can't, man. This is so freaking bizarre to me. It is just mind-numbingly shocking how we can have this obvious two-tier justice system. So I don't know. We'll see if they'll dismiss the documents case of Donald Trump. I mean, they almost have to now. I mean, how do you have this level of abuse, fraud, and illegalities from Joe Biden? This much just complete neglect of the law and classified documents, and he doesn't get charged because he's too old, and a jury may be sympathetic of his age and memory? Man, and this report also goes to the shocking memory loss that this guy has. So as this guy, Robert Hur, was doing this interview, he said that Biden couldn't remember when his son died and couldn't remember when he was serving his term as president or as vice president. Oh my. There's no way this guy's going to run for president, folks. They're going to have to put somebody in. This guy is toast. Stick a fork in him. He's done. Bring on the next one. Who is it? Michelle Obama? Bring it on. Bring it on. I'm sick of this stuff, man. The corruption, the fraud, the abuse of people, the propaganda from the media. I am so sick of it. Bring it on. Let the people decide. Why does Donald Trump have to campaign while simultaneously trying to defend his liberty and freedom from a out-of-control rogue justice system that is clearly being weaponized by his opposition? Why does he have to run a campaign like that? Joe Biden gets to campaign from his basement and then has a special prosecutor find all these things, all these laws that he broke, and then says that he cannot be charged, likely because he wouldn't be prosecuted because of his age and memory loss. But yet Donald Trump has to campaign for presidency while trying to defend his liberty and freedom from a radical justice system. Like, this is insane. Get out of here with this stuff, man. I hope everybody sees this. I hope you share the hell out of this episode and show everybody just how corrupt Joe Biden is. This guy's done. Bring on the next candidate. Let's go. Michelle Obama, let's do it. I'm over it. And we're going to find just as much corruption with her because her husband was just as corrupt as Joe Biden. So let's do it. Bring it on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, make sure to tune into the next segment. If you want to find the show, please follow us on Rumble. You can find the show on any podcast platform and social media platform. Just search my name in a search engine, Steven with a V, Tauriello. And I'll be back on with you guys tomorrow. As always, I want you guys to have a good day. Have a great week. TGIF. God bless you. God bless America. You guys have a good one. Bye-bye.